the speakers and I, we were discussing earlier how important this is, and that, you know, we are so glad to be able to do this. Because it does kind of feel like, you know, it's a little overwhelming. The vaping epidemic has impacted all families, it's impacted schools. So this is our chance to kind of all come together and think of ways and learn more about this topic and think of ways how we can all work strategically together. So glad to have you here. We are delighted to have two great presenters. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Carissa Anthony. I'm the Prevention and Development Coordinator at Homewood Schools. I also coordinate the Safe and Healthy Homewood Coalition. So some of you get our newsletters, some of you are invited to some of our meetings and things like that. So thank you for joining today, because our number one focus is to prevent youth substance use. That's our goal. And so I appreciate you being here today to talk about this important issue. We have Robin Gears. She is with Children's Hospital. She's with their pulmonary department and sleep medicine department. She's also the program manager of Tobacco Free Birmingham. So this is something that she's very passionate about. So we're thankful to have her present with us today and share her information. And then we also have Dr. Henneke, who is the principal of Homewood High School. So we are going to let Robin begin with her presentation. She's going to share a slide show with a lot of good information. Right now, you are turned off from making any comments, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop that into the chat, and we'll try to get to those questions after Robin presents. And then there'll be a little break. We'll do a little show and tell. Then Dr. Henneke's going to present and talk. So you'll have some opportunities along the way to type in questions that you have, and we'll try to get to those at various stopping points. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carissa, and thank you, Dr. Henneke, for having me today. I'm looking forward to sharing with you on a very important topic to all of us. And let me just get my slides up and going. Just take a second. Okay, how does that look, Carissa?
That looks good.
Okay, all right. So many of you already have some idea, some understanding of e-cigarettes and vapes, and many of your children do. Many of our students are experiencing them, and a lot of you and the students may not understand just how harmful they are. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about why healthcare professionals are so concerned about these particular nicotine delivery systems. So the truth about e-cigarettes and vaping. Current tobacco product use among high school students is at 23.6%. And of that, 19.6% of high school students are using e-cigarettes. What exactly is vaping? Let's just start with the basics. Vaping is the act of using a vape pen, e-cigarettes, vapes, e-pipes, e-cigars. And a vaping device basically has two different components, one part battery and one part cartridge. How does vaping work? E-cigarettes produce aerosol by heating liquid that contains nicotine, the addictive drug in regular tobacco products, and users inhale this aerosol into their lungs. Bystanders can also breathe in secondhand aerosol when the user exhales. Using an e-cigarette is what we call vaping. What is in e-cigarette vapor? E-cigarette aerosol is not just a harmless water vapor, as some may be saying. Chemicals are inhaled by the user and exhaled as secondhand aerosol. Manufacturing of e-liquid is not regulated. Even 0% solutions, as advertised, can still contain nicotine. Basically, what we are seeing on the market is unregulated liquids that contain many different kinds of harmful carcinogenic chemicals. What are electronic cigarettes? So we have here a variety of e-cigarettes that are on the market. They were invented initially in 2003 and introduced in the United States in the mid-2000s. There, as you can see in this picture, a wide variety of colors, sizes, weights. Starting on the bottom row at the left, the original e-cigarettes looked like cigarettes, the traditional pipe or cigar. Those are called cigalites. Over the years, the tank-based e-cigarettes are the ones in the middle that are more heavy and they have a large cartridge. Those can be refilled. Then the next generation of e-cigarettes have been the cartridge devices, and those are most popularly known as Juul, that has the cartridge. And then what we're going to talk about today, most specifically, is the disposable device, and that is what you see on that top line. So just some examples of those are the puff bar, the one on the far left, and that particular yellow one is banana ice, and you'll see 5% listed on the device, and that means 5% nicotine. The middle set, those are called Bitty sticks. Those are very popular right now. And then the one on the right is also called a puff bar, and it has just a little bit of a different design. You'll see on the top, it has just a more sleek design to go into the mouth. All of these, again, still are looking like USB drives, and that's what we remember with the Juul, the popular Juul. They're kind of staying in that same size. These are really easy to fit in the palm of your hand. Our students can easily disguise it in class or out in public, can be walking with the small stick in their hand and just bring their hand up to their mouth to take a hit without really anyone noticing. Notice the colors in the upper section, and then the flavors. Also want to bring you to your attention to the lower line again. This round shape, we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about the Soren design. This one packs the greatest amount of nicotine. That's really important to know. So again, just a variety of designs they've developed over the years to be as sleek as possible, and now just as attractive to our youth as the industry is moving from selling these to adults, which initially were sort of geared as a tobacco cessation device. Now you are going to see all of these are colorful, flavorful, because they are, like Carissa said in her opening comments, they are targeting our youth. Another name for e-cigarettes is ENDS, and that stands for Electronic Nicotine Delivery System. And they are delivering nicotine to our young people. Let's not be fooled. In the US, youth are more likely than adults to use e-cigarettes. And youth using e-cigarettes are 4 times more likely to start smoking. 80% of our youth used flavored e-cigarettes in the past month. And 3.6 million US middle and high school students used e-cigarettes in the past 30 days, including 19.6% of high school students. I mentioned that initially they were brought onto the market as an alternative to smoking. This is not a safe alternative to smoking. As we've learned more and more tests and research has been completed on the chemicals in the e-liquids, we now know that they are full of cancer-causing chemicals, volatile organic compounds, in addition to nicotine. And these are ultra-fine particles that are so easily taken into the lungs and embedded. Cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, all of these disguised with flavors and different types of oils. Highly unregulated. This is another example of how the devices have developed over the years. You can see where we are now, this disposable e-cigarette on the far right. Although that looks like a cigarette, we're going to see more specifically the devices that your students, our young people, are using, the ones that you're going to find in backpacks, in their cars, hidden under furniture. And these are the real ones that are packing the biggest punch of nicotine to our young people. This device here under rechargeable e-cigarettes, this again is the now less popular Juul, and it has the battery portion is the lower portion, and then the cartridge, which used to be bright colored, is here, and then this is the charging device. In 2020, the beginning of 2020, so just a year ago, legislation made it illegal for vaping companies to sell cartridges that were flavored. So that cut out and made illegal all of the fruit flavored cartridges, the dessert flavored. The only cartridges that Juul can now sell are tobacco flavored and menthol flavored. However, there has been new development of these disposable devices that are able to sell all of the fruit and dessert flavors, in addition to the little refillable bottles are still able to use the fruit flavors. So the legislation was there. It did ban the flavors that are attracting young kids in the cartridges. However, flavors are still being sold in disposable devices. That's why these are so popular with our young kids. These devices sell from $8 to $15. They're very affordable. They're colorful. They're, like I said, easy to hide. Some of the brand names that you may have heard of are Puff Bars, Bitty Sticks, Stig, and Pop. And these are among the most popular disposable brand names. They come pre-charged and pre-filled. So you basically just open up the packaging and you put it in your mouth. And when you suck in, you take a hit, it is activated. These contain high amounts of nicotine, and they contain what we call salt-based nicotine. And this salt-based e-juice liquid does have the nicotine, and it is in all of these new disposable e-cigarettes. The ones on the bottom here are called Stig, and the upper ones, again, the Puff Bars. You may wonder, well, are e-cigarettes addictive? And the answer is yes. As an example, this device in the middle is the Juul, and again, it looks like the USB drive. It is 1 Juul pod is the equivalent of 20 to 40 cigarettes, which is 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes. And again, these pods do contain nicotine, and we know that nicotine is a drug that your body will crave, and nicotine has a strong effect on the developing brains of our young people. All right, just like the Juul, we're going to look at a couple of the other devices and what these levels of nicotine actually mean. So 1 pack of cigarettes, within that pack, there's 20 milligrams of nicotine, which equals 20 cigarettes. 1 Juul pod is equal to 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. And I know you may not be familiar with milligrams, but you're going to see really quickly what this actually means. 41 milligrams is equal to 41 cigarettes in 1 Juul pod. 1 Puff Bar, again, this is probably the most popular device that our young people are using. 50 milligrams of nicotine, and that's 50 cigarettes. The Soren pod, it's the one that I showed you, that circular device that fits so perfectly in your palm, brightly colored. A Soren pod has 90 milligrams of nicotine in that device, and that's equal to 90 cigarettes. So you can see the concern. You have a young child who has become, addicted, or even just using casually this device. There's no way they're going to understand this level of nicotine. The Juul pod is equal to about 200 puffs. And you can imagine they're puffing away. They're with their friends. They're hanging out, feeling cool. They're feeling the effects of the nicotine. They might be feeling chill, and they continue to puff. And all of a sudden, they're finished with their disposable device, and they have just taken in 90 milligrams of nicotine, or 90 cigarettes over a course of however long, maybe days, maybe a week. All pods contain high levels of nicotine. And again, they're wrapped up in these creative, colorful packages. There are more than 15,000 flavors of e-liquids out there on the market for our kids. These can be found in drugstores, just your local gas station, in addition to all the vape stores that are popping up around town. E-cigarettes or the e-juice solution are made in very different ways, different concentrations of nicotine. You can see this display at a local gas station, different flavors. You'll see the dessert and the candy flavors. And then on the right side, you're going to see, again, the milligrams of nicotine. There's a real challenge here. The FDA is having a hard time regulating. Our state is even local enforcement having a hard time regulating these drugstores, gas stations, vape shops. The legal age to purchase these devices and liquids is now 21, but we know that underage youth are able to buy these without any consequence. So it's a huge health threat, as you can see. It's not safe to use e-cigarettes, even around children. There are cancer-causing chemicals in the exhaled e-cigarette vapor as well. The liquid, less than half a teaspoon of this nicotine liquid, can be fatal to the average toddler. So if you have one of the little small bottles that I just showed you laying around and the child were to open that up, that could be fatal to a young child, even to one of our young people if that's dropped on their skin. Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, and again, nicotine is highly addictive to our young people. Our young people are being bombarded with ads for e-cigarettes that are targeting them and that are appearing on TV, radio. Social media is a place that Juul has been using influencers. They've even been paying influencers to advertise their devices by looking cool. And minors can easily purchase, like we said, e-cigarettes in these convenience stores as well as online. What exactly is e-cigarette use doing to the body of our young people? We found that regular e-cigarette use causes inflammation and irritation of the airways, also the destruction of air sacs in the lungs, and it creates a weaker immune response to infection, such as COVID-19. E-cigarette use also affects the heart. Aerosol impairs blood vessel function. It causes stiff blood vessels, decreasing the flow of blood throughout the body. And there's an increased risk of blood clotting due to e-cigarette use. So the short-term health effects of e-cigarettes can be seen in coughing, wheezing, skin drying and cracking, increased acne, lightheadedness, and upset stomach. The long-term health effects of e-cigarettes, we can see e-cigarette and vaping-associated lung injury called EVALI, increased asthma attacks, seizures, COVID-19 risk, as we mentioned before, because of that weakened immune system, and also increased risk of heart attacks. The body on nicotine, we know that nicotine is addictive, and we're seeing in our young people that nicotine is rewiring and changing the way the brain functions. Nicotine is causing the heartbeat to be faster and the fight or the flight response. Also trouble with breathing and damage to lungs, as well as increased acid reflux. The adolescent brain is so sensitive and so uniquely susceptible to nicotine addiction. We've talked about this rewiring of the brain pathways. What happens is, as a young person begins experimenting with nicotine or e-cigarettes, um, they begin associating the nicotine use or the vaping with the environment that they're in. If they're relaxing with friends, or again, they're feeling cool, that creates a sense of pleasure. And with addiction, as the pleasure increases, of course, the use is going to increase. And that's when we see this pleasure pathway beginning and the addiction taking hold. It's sort of the image of the gerbil running on the spinning wheel. Young people get used to this feeling and they want to continue because their brains are young. They are easily moving on to a new tolerance level, which then causes them to want to vape more, and then their body just flat out needs nicotine to function. So the vaping devices are very deceptive in the way that, again, they're introduced with the flavors, the colors, but then over time, they can then realize that they are addicted. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the signs of addiction. Animal studies have shown that this exposure affects brain cell damage, and we can see it even in our young kids. We can see changes in behavior, we can see changes in studying and ability to focus and stay active, and also just in emotions as well. To summarize, e-cigarettes are marketed to children, make no doubt about that. If they were marketing to adults, why would they need to use all these creative flavors and colors? Biddy, stick, puff bar, and Juul contain high levels of nicotine, the addictive substance used to hook our children, and e-cigarettes are not a safe alternative to smoking. They're dangerous, and they have cancer-causing chemicals within the e-liquids, and they are largely unregulated. So with all of this information, we can now be informed, we can inform our students, and we can help them. That's the message that I would love to have us move to now. Just how can we support our students, and how can we prevent them from vaping in the first place? Educational curriculum is key, and this curriculum directed to students, teachers, parents, and community leaders. Part of the message and part of the support that I have, being part of the Alabama Department of Public Health grant called the Birmingham Youth Tobacco Prevention Program, is focused on education. And that's how I'm here today. And I'm so appreciative of their funding, and also that Homewood Safe and Healthy Homewood Coalition is our partner in this push for education. Number two, another way to prevent students from vaping is just to be aware. Just be aware of signs of tobacco use, some of the symptoms that we talked about earlier, in addition to just your relationship with your student. You can be aware of the friends they're hanging out with, the way they're using their money, and also their emotions, the way they're dealing with things. All of these can be indicators of tobacco use. Homewood is also a school system, thankfully, that is 100% tobacco free, and they have a policy stating that. We are hoping that throughout Alabama, just through the grant, that we can also encourage other schools to also be 100% tobacco free. Focusing on health, the things that I've shared today, I hope that you'll find an opportunity to talk to your young person about. Definitely the health effects are crucial. This is a very serious issue. You have local resources available to you, and I'll share a few of those. Carissa also is very connected and can share some of these resources with you. we know that consequences need to be there for students who are vaping, coming from administration as well as from parents. The things that you're dealing with, the things that you will be dealing with in the future, need consequences for sure. And then we also need to talk about if you are experiencing your young one is seeing signs of addiction, I would strongly encourage you to talk to your pediatrician as well as a counselor. We know that medical guidance as well as counseling can help in this situation. And then number 5, always keep open that line of communication. You love your young person, you're showing respect and care in addition to concern right now in dealing with vaping. And I've found that if we can keep those lines open and students know, our young people know how much we love them and that we want them to be as healthy as possible, that that really aids in our communication about these difficult topics. We are a team together, all of us, health professionals, your school administrators, your teachers, community leaders. We're all in this together, and we can all play a very important part in these steps that I've just talked about. And I mentioned local and state advocacy groups. If you feel this is something that you want to get more involved in on the state and local level, there is a place for you. And it's really a struggle, honestly, against big vape companies. It used to be Big Tobacco, and now Big Vape has renamed itself. There's such an industry there, but we are making strides, and we definitely need more advocates in this way. Tips to quitting. If you know of a young person who is addicted, talk to your doctor, talk to the pediatrician for guidance. For quitting, I recommend picking a quit date, choosing a date, getting rid of all tobacco and vaping devices. Avoiding triggers means avoiding the situations where one would normally be vaping or smoking, such as friend groups, certain friend groups that might be still vaping. One will need to avoid that in addition to other settings where vaping is taking place. And replace those activities with healthy choice. Being involved in a group that is not obviously not vaping, exercise, sports, any kind of hobby that will keep our young people active is a good way just to change the schedule, change their surroundings to a more healthy, positive influence. I mentioned nicotine replacement therapy here, and another term for that is NRT. These are nicotine patches, or there's gum, and there's also lozenges. And this has been a very effective way to help people quit smoking and vaping. For children that are under 18, nicotine replacement therapy is not FDA approved. So again, talk with your pediatrician if you feel there is an addiction issue here. And the last thing I mentioned is getting support. Again, we're all in this together. Support from your teachers, support from a counselor. It might be that the counselor provides a safe place for your young person to express their concern, their worry about some of their symptoms. But the supportive group will really go a long way in helping our teens. 2 other fantastic resources that I wanted to share with you. One is our Alabama 1-800-QUIT-NOW line, and it is just that. You can dial this number, and you can sign up for regular phone counseling. There's also a texting program from their app, and there's an 8-week free nicotine replacement therapy provision within this program. And again, that's for those who are 18 and older. Nicotine replacement therapy, again, is only FDA approved for those 18 and older, but there may be some situations where your pediatrician might recommend that there is a greater benefit than risk to the nicotine replacement therapy. So 1-800-QUIT-NOW. This line can be used for those who are smoking as well as those who are vaping. And again, that's over 18. Then this program I am in love with. It's called the Truth Initiative. And this is a really fantastic program because it's peer-to-peer, inspiring lives free from nicotine, vaping, and nicotine, smoking, vaping, and nicotine. If you have a young person who would like to cut back, who's motivated to quit, they simply need to text Ditch Vape to 88709. Again, that's Ditch Vape to 88709. And they will be prompted by a text-based coaching system that will first, it does ask them a little bit about themselves. It asks them their age. And then if they are interested in quitting, it asks some personal information about how much they're vaping, kind of getting at what their level of addiction is. And then based on all of their answers, the coaching will help them, will give them guidance on when they're feeling stressed, what to do in stressful situations, if they're trying to cut back and they feel a craving coming on and they just feel like they can't stop. The student can then vape to the coach, and the vape coach can give just a real simple advice, positive feedback, encouragement for those times that they're struggling. So I really highly recommend Truth Initiative's program called This Is Quitting. And then education, support, and encouragement, I think, wraps up our ways to help our young people. So thank you. That's the end of my presentation. And now if anyone has questions, or maybe we want to think a little bit about looking at some of these specific devices that we've talked about, Carissa or Dr. Henneke.
Robin, I think that would be a good time to just do some show and tell. And
Okay,
so
great.
I will start with what's in my hand. I don't know if y'all were paying attention to me whenever it first came on, when I first started speaking, but this is an example of a small vape device. It's a rechargeable blue. If I'm sitting here doing like this in class, what do you think the teacher thinks this is? Okay, we're going to think this is a pen. So it's very easy. These are still very popular. This is one of the top products that you see. It's the blue. It's rechargeable. It's going to be reversed. Sorry, so you can't see it super well. This is still very popular. If you go into a convenience store, you're going to see a ton of these on the shelves. You saw some of the, in the pictures, you saw Juul. This is still very, very prevalent. You may see things like this and go, oh, I think that's like a fuse or something. What is that? You know, that's where the Juul, that's where the nicotine juice is right there. That's the mouthpiece. So it plugs in. Juul is also rechargeable. It's got those little charging ports on the bottom. So they actually plug these into their laptop. So that's an example. Let's see. Oh, so we talked about the biddies, the little rechargeable, not rechargeable, disposable. This is an example of one of the Stigs. And I think I'm holding that up the right way. But the name of that is Mango Bomb. So I'm sure this is smells great. Doesn't smell like a cigarette. Smells like candy. Tastes like candy. It's the Stig version. That's always going to be backwards, I think, when I hold these up. But notice, again, what can I do with this? Can y'all see that? If I want to take a hit off of it, this is all I do. So teachers can't see it. Parents might not be able to see it. You know, it's very discreet. There's no adult out there that has to worry about someone seeing them use a vape device. The only people that worry about adults seeing them use a vape device are children. So we also talked about the Soren. I used to have one of the Soren pods that's the teardrop shape, which I love to show because this is a Soren pod and this is one of the rectangular models. it's a little more bulky. Like you can kind of see that. But again, if you saw this, you might think I'm holding a cell phone. Smaller, like a small cell phone. You wouldn't necessarily realize that I was holding a vape device. But this thing is one of the refillables. So this is one of those that you can still get the yummy flavors and stuff in. And so they refill this, and this holds, I believe, Dr. Gers said it was, well, I'm sorry, I just promoted you to doctor, Miss Gers, that this will hold actually the equivalent of 90 cigarettes in this little thing right here.
That's right.
Now, the teardrop shaped one is a little, it's even more discreet because it's actually designed, if you think about the palm of your hand, it's this shape. And so all that sticks out is the mouthpiece right there. So I just wanted y'all to have some, a picture of what that looks like. I have some other devices, but I mean, you get the point. You can see that these things, they're not like this. Very, very rarely will you see a student or a child that'll use a product like this that's huge and bulky and it's like really heavy. You see adults use these more because adults don't care if people see them vaping. Like it's okay, it's legal for them, they can do that. And older people, older as in adults, like these products because they like to be able to buy different flavors, blend flavors. They're not concerned about the discreetness of it. So you'll see those kind of things more in the adult population. I do want you to see an example of what the liquid looks like, because like for the Soren, this is what they're going to be using in it, is a liquid like this. This is a pineapple flavor. It smells amazing. So we wanted y'all to be able to see that, to see what some of these examples look like. I know it's not as good as being in person and being able to look at a table and pick these things up and feel them and stuff. But I think being at least the awareness of what they look like is really important. I will tell you, I went to a convenience store this morning because I was missing my teardrop Soren. So I was looking for another one. I didn't find one. But what I did find, y'all, next to a high school, the best places to go are always near a high school, convenience stores near a high school, was this incredibly huge clear case full of not just these disposable nicotine devices, but a lot of THC-8 devices. THC-8 is a cousin to THC-9, which is a controlled substance, psychoactive, gets you high. THC-8 still gets you high. So there was a wealth of these things. I actually took a picture of it. I wish I could share the picture with you right now. But near a high school, totally available in the disposable format, hard to see. All of this stuff is very concerning from the addiction perspective, but also this is all just counterintuitive to what we're trying to do in schools in terms of education, because even nicotine, we know, impacts memory and learning. Okay, it's going to make it harder to remember. It's making learning harder, in addition to all the additional health risks and stuff. So I typed, because we know that unfortunately children are a victim of this. As parents, we kind of have to shift gears from, we have to deal with the punitive aspect of breaking a rule and using a substance like this that is illegal for a minor. But then you have to kind of switch gears to, okay, but are you addicted? And do I need to help connect you to cessation options? And so Robin did a great job of providing some examples of cessation options that are out there and encouraging parents your first line of contact should be the pediatrician. But in addition to that, I did in the chat put some resources for quitting. This is primarily, these are geared, the 1-800-QUIT now is geared for all age groups, but the Ditch Vape and Not For Me, those are a little more teen geared. And there you can download an app and you can enroll using the app. I think it's just a little bit more geared to how young people would seek support. So that's in the chat over there. And so now we will turn it over to Dr. Henneke for him to to close us out with some information.
Yeah. So first, I really appreciate, that each of you taking the time to be here, because I think educating, creating awareness, I think is very important. I think it's great. We have a policy, 100% tobacco free, but I think that has to be supported. I think it has to be reinforced. So I think these are important steps in that. you know, as Robin was presenting, you know, I just Googled puff, and I started typing in puff, and Google populates it, and it's at the top of the list. And right away, you know, there's all the flavors, you know, great bubble gum, blueberry ice, you know, that's for our kids. And so and I appreciate, you know, Krista, you taking the time to show us what those devices look like. I got very used to what a jewel looked like. I actually got used to where I would just even know what I was what I would find in a student's backpack by simply finding the cover, the little bitty tab that covered the cartridges. So I knew what had been there, because they're very unique. As technology continues to advance, we don't use thumb drives very much anymore. So the design and style of these nicotine delivery devices continues to evolve and change. Like the blue, it looks like a pen, or really making them more concealable. So I want to emphasize, or I want to reinforce what Julie said, and that's the fact that, you know, we're in this together. I think it's important for, yes, okay, the school identifies, and we have a code of conduct, and we have amended that over the years to, because it used to just say cigarettes and that kind of stuff, but we had to kind of change the wording of that so it helps students understand we're talking about nicotine delivery devices. You're not supposed to have those or bring those in school. But again, I think we have to be vigilant and do more than just point to it in a code of conduct. In that, I think as a school, we need to be active in messaging. I think we need to be active in, quite frankly, walking through the bathrooms, you know, being present where students are most likely to share that or pass it along, that sort of thing. And so I've made that a point of emphasis with my administrative team about bathroom walkthroughs. And my administrative team is there's more males than females. So, you know, Miss McBride has more ground to cover. But, you know, I think it's important that we maintain a vigilance in popping in and creating an environment where students know it's not welcomed or wanted. I'm thankful for the relationship we have with Homewood Police Department, and inviting their canine units to come to our school, as it's good for their connectedness, for their training, for their dog good practice. But I want them walking, you know, through my schools, and I don't want that to be a secret. I want students knowing that, yeah, I made an announcement a given day. Yeah, we've got Homewood Police Department here. You know, they brought a couple dogs, so we're going to go to visit a couple classrooms. No, we can't visit every classroom every time, but students knowing that don't bring that stuff to school, which is unfortunately about as far as my limit goes with regard to what's brought to school. But I try to have further conversations, because the truth is it affects your learning. It affects students developmentally, their memory, their learning, their capacity to do well in school. I don't know that they quite get the fullness of that rationale, but we keep beating that drum as well. And I'll be frank with you that the challenge with me is, you know, we call these nicotine delivery devices, but understand, you know, Krista mentioned the THC 8, the young people throughout our communities are looking for other things to fill their jewel pods with, other things to other liquids with regard to not just nicotine. And when we talk about the flavors, and it's an open door, and unfortunately we have come across that, and it's out there. I think you need to be attentive. Go visit your local gas station or your convenience store, because it's right up front. So being aware of what's there and what you need to look for, I think it's a shared responsibility, families. I think the school has to be consistent in holding students accountable. And I think we have to have our eyes open and be alert and aware and look into things and check. Show me what's in your hand. What do you have there? But we need to do that at home as well, because You know, the student, well, but the school's not producing that. We don't sell them. We don't have them. So they're being brought in from somewhere. That's outside of school. So knowing kind of check the glove box, look under the bed. It's unfortunate that we now think or kids think it's cool to have backpacks with hidden pockets. But you've got to dig in and you've got to look through that stuff. I just think it's important that we feel together and creating awareness and being vigilant to look around, and then yes, accountability. And I for me and for the school part, I think that's more than just finding a vape on a student and giving them a disciplinary consequence. I think that's involving our student assistance counselors, and involving conversations about what's going on and why and all that kind of stuff. So they're hidden or they're designed that way so they're not seen. So knowing what to look for or being willing to look is important. When we talk about other signs or ways, the stuff's not free. Okay, it's not free, so it costs money. So I just think of a practical way, being aware of your students' spending or their frequent requests. I need gas money. Well, I just gave you gas money, 2 days ago. You're not driving around that far. That's to me that would be a red flag. Monitoring their use. All of a sudden they need. It's everybody's birthday falls in January. That doesn't seem right. Why are we buying so many gifts? Or what is the money going to? I just think that's, I don't know, maybe an indicator would probably be a good way to phrase that. Being aware of things that come up missing or stolen, that would be a sign of something's not right. Where's our stuff? That kind of stuff. I don't know, Chris, is there anything that you would add to that or that I left out?
I would say that's probably accurate. You're right. It's not free. And students usually have limited income. Most of their money comes from parents most of the time. So monitoring debit card transactions, just looking for, it has not been unusual over the years for us to see students that have actually bartered. So they'll buy everybody's meal, like parents just give them a debit card. So they buy everybody's meal at Zaxby's or wherever, and then their friends pay them cash. So then they have cash and they're able to use that cash to buy stuff that their parents don't want them to. And the same thing, like you mentioned, be aware of missing or stolen items, things of value. If they're constantly losing those important things or saying they're stolen, maybe they're not. Maybe they're being sold. I mean, you just start asking, just start. That just is those things that red flag kind of waves, and you go, I need to check them. I need to check a little deeper on this. Doesn't mean that anything is happening, but you just want to check.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Henneke, is there anything else?
Yeah, no, I think you have to be intentional about willing to look, so we started off the school year and I expressed that to my administrative team, like we have to be out and about, not just class change, but all throughout the day, whenever you walk through by a restroom area, just walk through it. And okay, I'm not a lucky person. Okay. So I don't chalk it up to chance or luck, but the reality is I walk through bathrooms and I see it. So to me, that just, look, I felt pretty strongly that we had vapes in our school because I'm not an idiot. And sure enough, through repeated walkthroughs and like that, I eventually came across a student with a vape in their hand, and so we kind of do our follow through. Yes, there's a discipline side of that, but there's the other side, I think, that needs to be addressed. And my encouragement is you have to look and you have to be willing to look and you have to just put it on your list. It's what needs to be done.
And that's great. I appreciate that y'all are doing that at school. And, I know as a parent, that's something that I do. I check backpacks. I've got teenagers. It's just what I have to do.
Yeah.
And having those open conversations and the monitoring and all that kind of stuff, we're all in this together. And I want to share something about some advocacy opportunities, because whenever I say that we're all in this together, I always think of that poem about, the person that's throwing the starfish back into the ocean, one at a time. And, they say, well, why are you doing that? Because you can't save them all. And they're like, yeah, but I saved this one. And so certainly as a parent, that's what we do. We do everything we can to save ours, right? We're important to that one. But there are some ways as community members, parents, administrators, people who work in this field, where we can have some opportunities to help everyone. And we call those advocacy opportunities. If you are interested in any kind of advocacy opportunities and working on some of these projects, I'm going to, in the chat over here, post an email. This will come to me, and I'll be able to connect you with these advocacy groups in the state. One of the little tidbits of information that I learned a few years ago is that there's this, 1 in 8 rule. And that means if one person, or wait, hold on. You can make one change in a policy with a legislator or a lawmaker if at least 8 people contact them. Like, that's the tipping point. If they get 8 emails, 8 phone calls, 8 visits, that's kind of the tipping point to make one change policy wise. So we can all be one of the 8, that's kind of our challenge, is be one of the 8 to make a difference.
Yeah. Krista, I really want to support and reinforce the power of advocacy, because if you think back to one of Robin's initial slides when she was talking about tobacco use or how nicotine, the cigarette use was so low. And if you go back historically to look before vaping came on the scene, through advocacy, through the excise taxes, through pressure on big tobacco, through a campaign talking about, health risk, we actually saw the trend significantly lowered and lower and lower with student use of tobacco. I mean, they got the message. Significantly fewer and fewer students were smoking cigarettes. All right, that was working. And my concern is that I don't want to wait years and years on down the road before we get that kind of momentum with regard to the harmful effects or impacts of vaping on students' development. And so I think, these groups and these organizations pushing for accountability, I think is very important. I think we know enough now, based on our history with big tobacco, what needs to be done. And so there's a push for that. And so I really encourage you to email Carissa and get the information on how you can support and what you can do to help with accountability and protecting all of our kids.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, we're going to have to work together to make a difference on this one. And that's a great analogy. So I'm going to give it like a couple of minutes. If you've got a question, please pop it over into that chat. And we'll monitor that for about 2 minutes and just see if anyone has a question.